Hello and welcome to Connections Forum, which is a forum for relationships, expression and healing. And today we are in episode 65. Our special guest today is Markus Dieterle, and we will talk about him a little later. The title of this episode is Learn About Ki and How You Use It in Your Daily Life. Our show offers talks and interviews regarding the most important areas of human life, such as relationships, personal expression and self-development, and also cultural development, as well as healing of all of these areas. And the purpose of our show is to give you inspiration and also to teach you new skills with which to handle the issues which are connected to our topics. And before we introduce Markus, some words about ourselves, your hosts. I'm Heidi Hornlein. I'm a transformational coach and a voice coach and a classical singer and a retreat host and a Hangout host, as you see here, together with Margherita, but also with another Hangout show, which is called The Wisdom Factory, and we will begin next Wednesday. Hope to see you there. I have also, together with my husband Mark, a retreat here in Italy, and we invite you to come to some of our retreats about creating a relationship beyond your wildest dreams. And you can find us on the website thepowerofrelationship.com. And now I give over to you, Margherita.
So I am Margherita Crystal Lotus, and I am a intuitive life and business mentor to women who wants to recover from emotional trauma and learn how to get back into life, or simply get rid of stress so that they can do what they want in their life and be happy. And recently I've had the pleasure of actually creating a number of online programs that's easy to access at any time. And if you want to learn more, go to thecrystallotus.com. And I also have a retreat here in Kingston, Ontario, in Canada, called Enchantment Healing Retreat, where I see private clients for VIP weekends and other creative endeavors that we can do to restore and heal. And so that was about me. And so now I want to introduce Markus. Say hello, Markus.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Markus Dieterle, and yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Okay. It's such a pleasure to have Markus Dieterle here, because what sparked my interest was that he have studied something called Ki Jutsu. I hope I pronounce it correctly, and that is a inspired by Eastern philosophy and martial arts, and using that for self-defense. So, is there anything more that you want to tell about yourself? Why did you actually start this? Why did you actually start studying this technique or method?
Well, actually, I started it because I wanted to initially learn something about self-defense, and I was somehow more drawn to all the Eastern types and ways of defending yourself. So when I started to study at the university, we had a very broad and varied sports program. And there were actually several self-defense classes in various categories. So there was judo and karate and aikido, and kijutsu was actually one of them. So I read through the descriptions, and I thought, well, maybe this kijutsu thing is something that you could check out, and if it doesn't work out, well, aikido would be the next thing to try. So initially it sounded pretty interesting, because on the one hand you would learn things about Ki, and really learn how to use that. On the other thing was pretty much learning to defend yourself with it. And as it turned out, I actually learned a bit more than just self-defense. So that was pretty interesting.
So what can you explain exactly what is Ki?
Well, let's start with Kijutsu. I think Kijutsu is not very widely known because it's actually a form that was invented by someone here in Germany, a guy by the name of Hans von Rollbeck. And so what he actually did was, I think he started with Aikido and similar stuff. And after several years of training and looking at what the masters in each art really did, he discovered some similarities between the different styles. So, for example, he noticed that all of the masters were really skillful and really did things right on the money, and they were actually pretty relaxed when they were fighting and had to defend themselves. And they also seemed to have a pretty good perception because they would react to things so quickly that it almost seemed like magic sometimes. So he thought a little bit about that, and the fact that usually to reach this level you would have to study the specific art of self-defense for years and years maybe. And he asked himself, okay, maybe we can up with different exercises and different ways to actually reach the same kind of level and the same basic things without having to study for so long. So he tried out a few things, and eventually he developed this Kijutsu style out of it, where you really learn about your body, you learn different aspects of Ki, and you essentially learn how to defend yourself with movements that are pretty much part of everyday movements that you make somewhere. So it's
yeah. So the basic question I have is it's an energy, right? And as I hear from you, is it like you pay attention to that energy inside of yourself and around you? Is that what Kijutsu is?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I entered into Kijutsu, I didn't even have a clue about Ki, so I did a little bit of reading, and everything that I could read, there was something mentioned, okay, it's some kind of energy and flow and some energy that's really surrounding us and that's inside of us. And yeah, it didn't sound very practical. It sounded very esoteric, and I thought, okay, how can I use this in self-defense or elsewhere? So it was really difficult to describe, actually. It has several aspects to it that you can really experience by doing different exercises, basically. And some things that you really feel into there and that you can actually use practically are really hard to describe with words, because some things there just are no words for it, and that's one of the reasons why all the descriptions of it really sound so esoteric.
So what was your first actual experience where you actually experienced that you can listen into your own Ki and see a result outside? Do you have some story about that when you practiced this?
Yeah, I think really well, it's difficult to start. So one thing was to to discover about Ki was to really get a feel for your body. That's really where we started, basically, to really get to know your body better and to get a feel for it, and pretty much relax any part that you want to relax, and to really feel into this, how each part feels when it's actually relaxed. And one thing, of course, is pretty much about breathing. So you can essentially breathe in and try to imagine that the energy that you are actually bringing into your body by breathing in really flows to the point where you want to have it. Either you want to just basically just channel it to all of your body, but if somehow you need to relax a certain portion of your body, you can really direct it there. So that was one aspect. And the other thing was maybe about broadening your perception, that you can really enhance your perception to a level where you feel what's really going on around you, and what other people that you meet are actually up to. So basically, one of the interesting things was to find that when you are in such a self-defense situation, and you really manage to get your own stress level down, if you will, and to mentally and physically relax to a certain level, then you can actually feel the tension that's coming from the other person, even if this person is some meters away from you. It's basically somehow it feels like a flow of electricity, basically, where you have two poles of a battery that basically have different levels of tension, or electrical, whatever. And when you connect them, there's this flow of electricity, and basically the same thing happens basically between humans. And the hard thing is, and that's what we really have to do the exercises for, is to actually realize what you can really feel into, because most of that is happening at a level that's usually your brain just filters out, because the signal that your brain receives is just too weak, and is just normally ignored. And I found that.
So Heidi want to say something here, okay?
Yeah, I want to pick up the word what you said. It sounded so esoteric, and I want to pick that up a little bit, because esoteric has become a sort of a no-no word. Because there before were people who said what I don't see and what I cannot touch doesn't exist. And I mean, there are still a lot of people who think that way. And that's what I find so interesting, that many of us, and more women, I would say, than men, who were trained in, like we were, in mental stuff, you know, came to the realization that this is not woo-woo, that is real, that energies are real, and that you can train to feel them. And this is, I find it very interesting that you say it. And in Japan or in the East, where these martial arts were discovered, they did exactly that. They were not in their head thinking about, you know, what could they do next, but they just trained themselves to perceive everything. I have to add, I did, when I was 50, I began with Aikido, and I did it only a year and a half or two. It was a little bit too late, but I think things like that would be needed to be taught very young, in very young age, and women wouldn't have any fear anymore to go alone at night through the streets. It would, we would feel so much more confident in our power to know what is going on in the world. But the main question was that how is your contact with other men and scientists and engineers, all these brain biased people, how is it there in the community? Are you a strange being for them, or?
Well, no. Normally in my day job, etc., when I'm just working, then I'm just acting normally.
Normally, is it not normal?
Yeah, but I think they don't realize it, that I can actually sense some things that well, are maybe a little out there for most people. So, but the interesting thing, what I found is that actually this perception is basically not just a one-way ticket. It really goes both ways. So, for example, we did some exercises later on where we would actually try. Well, let me start at another point. Normally, when you really try to feel what's around you, the most things that you can feel are in a sort of sensory bubble, if you will, that basically in a normal state pretty much surrounds you. And it's size-wise, it's about the size that you can really reach to where with your arms and your legs, etc. But if you really train and feel into it, you can really shape this field of perception with your mind, and you can reach out and pretty much deform it. And the other thing is, even if you're not physically touching something and feeling something, you can actually, on the one hand, perceive things just with the kind of senses that you have, which are not only your primary senses, but basically all of your body, your whole nervous system, your bloodstream, whatever. There may be some senses that we don't know about yet. And yeah, what I wanted to get to was that it's really not only one way. It's not only coming in from the outside, but you can use the same perception channels to send something out. For example, and this was what I initially wanted to speak or talk about, was an exercise that we did a little bit later on when we had already done several hours of training. We would really form pairs, and one person would stand on one side of the room and the other person would stand directly across the room. And the idea was that we would take turns, and one person would just try to deform his perception field and really basically send out his own presence, or virtual presence maybe, if you want to call it that, to some point along the way between you and this other person. And so the other person on the other side would have to slowly walk up to you and try to feel where you actually were on this position. And yeah, it actually worked really well. It wasn't quite an interesting experience.
Can I tell a story here that happens 2 days ago that is illustrate exactly what you were talking about? There's two people standing in front of each other and then going to feel the other person's field. So that happens with my cat and a baby fox right outside of my door. And so I heard some noise. It was this fox like barked, woof, 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 woof. And I wondered, what is that? So I went out and looked, and there my cat was sitting there putting out a huge energy field, and this baby fox, I think he was very scared because he barked and the cat didn't move, and it's like he put out a force field, like, this is my space here. What are you doing here? Because first time when I came outside, I thought, foxes are not good for cats or whatever. He can hurt him or whatever. So then I went out and I did this, and then I said, come to the cat, come in, and eventually he did, because I didn't want to have a fight between the two. and that illustrates exactly, the fox was just really angry or scared angry, right? And the cat was just silent and moving this energy like out and out and out. I could feel it. And the same between
I
people,
think
right?
that, yeah, I wanted to say we do it also between people, but we don't really notice it,
Yeah.
I mean, when you go in the underground, and some people really, it's often dependent on posture and on verbal expressions, but not always. There are sometimes you just want to go away from certain people, and for what reason ever. But I wanted to say another thing. Markus, are you familiar with the research of Rupert Sheldrake?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Oh, so that is a must to read. He is exactly working on that, and one of his studies, he worked much with animal owners and animals, but one of his studies was also to see if you make, how do you say, sessions of it's real research, the feeling of being stared at. And this is extremely interesting, that it's more than by chance that people could feel that they are stared at from behind. So that we have exactly perceptions which are not seeing, which are not hearing, which are not feeling, but it's, you call it like a field. And he is calling that the morphogenetic fields and so on. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's really one thing that we really went into a little bit, because these people that are staring, these are usually concentrating on you, and so they have a certain amount of tension. And if you are just standing there or sitting there quite relaxed, you can really feel this force, this energy flowing towards you, and you can really detect where it's coming from. But I think that's one of the things that most people really think is intuition or something. But it's actually a way of sensing something. It's just not very conscious sensing usually.
Or people say it just isn't real, because Rupert Sheldrake, he has such a difficulty to be accepted. He is his TED talk was taken off because it was a little bit more about the non-scientific way of mainstream science to scientists to do their science. And so he was banned from TED. But mainly he is saying what he is doing is science, but he is not accepted at all, because scientists say it cannot be, and even if it was true, I wouldn't believe it. Things like that, what you have experienced, and what many people have experienced when they are not in the tunnel of this cannot be. So for that I'm interested in you, especially as your day job is, let's say, on the how can I call it?
And very much on the technical side, and
where you don't believe in things which you don't see and which don't appear and so on, and like mainstream techniques and scientists are. And then you have this experience which tells you that it's just not true, that there is another part in life which is important and which is real, although you don't see it. Let's say it in this way.
Yeah.
And you cannot prove it by mathematics.
I think the main thing, of course, is for scientists, because they don't yet have any way of measuring this. And I think it's... basically, it's not too unsimilar to a lot of the things which are going on in, say, quantum physics, for example. there are so many strange concepts out there, and they're really trying to find mathematical models, etc. But if you really look at what it actually means for basically everything that's around us, matter and energy, and everything that we are made of ourselves, then it's really hard to get a grasp on this. I mean, just
yeah. It's also because science.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I wanted to say science as we. Oh. When we come from the integral aspect, when you have seen some of our shows from the external side, there you have certain tools for measuring things and what is right and wrong, existence and non-existence. But you cannot use the same tools for the internal aspect. So they will be able to measure subtle energies and all this stuff, but other internal experience, they cannot measure experience, and so they say it doesn't exist. The thing is, you can make science, inner science, but with the appropriate tools, you know, and not with the ones from the outer science. And I think this is what today is the meeting point, where they cannot step over this division. I mean, I'm a bit out of the topic, but it's really interesting to me that you, as a, let's say, hardcore worker during the day, have this experience of a completely different world.
Well, amazing. I have to admit, it wasn't sort of the first foray into this kind of experience. I mean, maybe for Key it was, but I had also experienced other things before which couldn't really be scientifically explained. So yeah, well, I was pretty much open to it, and was even without knowing how it actually works, I learned that well, I can actually work with these things. I can really use this flow of energy inside myself and outside myself, and it's really practical in a way. I mean, one thing that was also interesting, what I also mentioned before, was this two-way connection here, that you can not only sense things, but also send back a kind of energy. There was one other exercise that we took, where we really formed two lines, and one person would get in front of the two lines, and in each line the people would basically line up one behind the other, and grab the person in front basically by the shoulders, and basically try to create a sort of static tension field. So the person that was in front actually had, as an exercise, had to feel and really pick up this kind of energy field, this kind of force, if you will, and just add a little direction to it. And what we actually found was that it doesn't really take physical contact to really add this additional direction. And we pretty much succeeded in making people fall down just by a thought, if you will. So that was quite something.
This is Margherita's field. No, Margherita, this is your field of energy healing, and it is true. It's not just woo-woo.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I was, during my teenage year, I studied a lot of martial arts, like judo or aikido, like a teenager, and even karate. So I understand what you say here, Marcus, and then at one time, I actually had to practice that, exactly what you say here about somebody coming behind you, and if you feel that person's tension. So I went in the subway. That was in Stockholm. It was 11:30. I came back from my practice from the other side of town, and it was in the evening, right? And so I went out, and then there was this gangs of guys, whatever, who was there. But I wasn't scared because I felt myself in my power. I just came from practice, right? And then I saw these guys, and another time I might have been scared, but I wasn't. So I went through all of these. I was the only girl there on the platform, and so this is like another time another girl may not have been that secure, but nothing happened to me, and they don't even notice me. They didn't even notice me. I walked past that. It was kind of a scary looking place, a little dark, and then I went on my subway. So I think that may be illustrating what you said there about that practice.
Yeah, I think that's also another aspect, because if you really know these things and feel into these things, you can really use that energy to basically balance yourself. And of course, training these things also makes you a lot more confidence, because you know you're just not you don't just have simple techniques that you can use, like okay, I know how to throw a guy over my shoulder or something, but you can actually use what you've learned and to really sense what's actually there. So if some guy comes towards you and you're waiting for the bus or something, and he's this huge guy, and maybe you really tense up, then you can't really feel what's actually there. But if you just try to stay calm and relaxed, and you can really reach out and feel what this person is really up to, and you can really work with it. And then you know, well, does he want to attack me? Does he want to rob me? Or does he just want to ask for the time, maybe? So
yeah, that's a very interesting topic. So like when we live in our life, we integrate with people, we're talking with people. Like here right now, I feel like I'm putting out energy to be speaking to all you guys, right? And so can we use that techniques or the practice of key to be successful in other areas? Let's say finding solutions of a technical matter, or be better of communicating with other people, or convincing people of something that we want to convince them to. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I don't know about the convincing part, but of course you can use it, especially the perception side, to really analyze a little bit more of what's actually going on. So usually if you are talking to other people, and well, if you only have just a basic description of a problem that they're having, then by talking to them and really trying to feel into them and really sense some things, you may be able to detect some things that they don't really recognize as being a problem. And so, I mean, in my case, it's usually more of a technical solution, but for the whole thing, if I also often have to basically analyze new problems that arise, and often enough we don't really know what the actual cause of these problems. So I try to analyze them, and it is sort of a mixture usually between the things I've learned and the experience that I have on one side, and also this intuitive feeling, if you will, to just know, okay, there's something here and there's something there, and basically it's part logic and part feeling at times. Sometimes I can really just basically sense, okay, the problem must be coming from there because it just feels that way, without really, yeah. I think afterwards, when I've found it, then I can usually rationally explain, okay, this was somehow also a logical thing to do, but yeah, if you just look at the basic options, where to find the root cause, if you will, and how to solve it, etc., then yeah, maybe it wouldn't have been your first choice. So yeah,
Yeah.
Go
try
ahead,
to incorporate
Heidi.
that. Yeah.
I have heard that from the big scientists, who have really created breakthroughs in science, like for instance Einstein. They always said that the solutions came never by thinking, but they came by other ways. I mean, thinking is a big part, but you cannot create new things out of something which is already, here. So this intuition part is extremely important to come to new, how to say, to a new level, I would say. Mm-hmm.
It was so funny because I was going to mention the same thing, so we were on the same wavelength.
Even so many kilometers distant, we are on the same wavelength.
Because I remember a picture of Einstein sitting and sort of meditating or contemplating, and then it was like a tree inside of his mind, and then he found the pathway to a different branch over here that he hadn't thought of before. And that made a huge impression on me. And I think it's maybe only key that is actually contributing to the skill of intuition. Because if you follow the energy lines, I hope you agree with me here, Dieter, or Markus. So I think making connection there is very helpful.
Yeah, I think it is. I think the really hard part is when we grow up and we experience the world around us and we learn things, and our brain is somehow trained by the whole process that usually we filter just several things away that we can actually feel, and all things that really pass this filter just are the things that really enter into our conscious mind and that we can act upon consciously. So by actually learning this kyucho and yeah, training key techniques, one of the things that was really nice to learn was that you can really basically try to learn how to control these filter mechanisms inside your own brain, if you will, and to raise all these subconscious things that you perceive in some way or other, and really raise them to a conscious level. And the hard thing is, of course, doing this consciously and permanently. And I have to admit, I'm not yet at the level where I could say, okay, I feel everything all the time. But at least I'm aware of it, and I can make use of it when I need.
It's interesting you said feeling it all the time. I had a friend or an acquaintance a long time ago, and she could not turn off that filter. She took in every energy all over the place, and she, like, it really was harmful to her because she couldn't turn it off. It's just like almost like you're in the middle of the street and you can't stop the cars from hitting you, right? And so I think it's very valuable to be able to monitor and filter and have a little area of barrier to energies, because otherwise you're going to get quite harmed by it. So can you show a little exercise of how you can do that?
You mean controlling the filter, or?
Yes.
Because that's yeah, that's really a little bit difficult. I think the one thing that we actually started from was to basically get a better feel for your body, for example. So the main, or one of the initial exercises was actually to just lie down on the floor and relax and close your eyes, and then little by little concentrate on different parts of your body and basically try to feel into how these parts actually feel when they are relaxed and when you are in a relaxed state, and to really basically try to memorize this kind of feeling. And well, you just start at one part of your body, for example your feet, and then when you've memorized how your feet feel and how your toes feel, etc., then you can just slowly move up the whole body and really feel into all parts and record that. And later on, when you're exercising, you can actually use this memory of this relaxed feeling that you have and really basically just bring it back to this part by just sort of replaying your own memories, if you will. So that's the first thing that you have is the physical level, and when you really do that, then it's also easier to mentally relax. And
can I say something here, Dieter? Yeah. What I think it's a little bit tricky when people are not used to feel their body. They often think they feel their body. So this is an additional step to really go into the feeling and not to think it. You know, to think that you feel.
It's like eating that ice cream that is so good, and you and you feel it like tingles in all your body. Can that illustrate that?
Something like this, and not only thinking, oh, the ice cream is good, and I should have another one, and all this mental construction and around that, and that you don't even taste it in the meanwhile.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a problem for some people, of course. I think what you really have to, if you're really a person who is thinking and analyzing a lot, like I am, it's well, difficult at first, because you have to realize yourself that your brain is actually connected to each and every part of your body, through your nervous system, through the bloodstream, and all of your body is just sending all of these signals to your brain. And there are just different levels to your brain, which are basically acting as filters or just redirecting some input that you have, and which then the higher parts of your brain interpret in some way and connect to memories, etc. So I think you really everyone really feels their own body, but we don't usually we don't consciously feel it all the time. For example, mostly you only feel your stomach when you're hungry, but it's actually there all the time, and if you just use a little concentration, you can feel your stomach and every other part.
So we are coming to the end of this episode, and I'm very excited to talk about this topic, and I would like to do it several more times. So what is your takeaway? What's your final word here, Markus?
Ooh, final word. That's difficult. Well, I think one thing is if you aren't really trained in Ki, one thing is to accept that you can actually feel a lot more and do a lot more than you think you're capable of, and that you can really, you should really try to be open and basically sometimes really learn to trust your intuition a little bit more, because your intuition is actually fueled by all the things that you don't consciously perceive, but that you can actually feel through this whole field of energy and flow that is around you and that is inside you all of the time. So yeah, I think the takeaway would be, yeah, trust your instincts, basically.
That's awesome.
Especially if you're not sure about something.
Yeah. How about Heidi?
Yeah, for me, it's a great joy. I feel sort of full, you know, complete, because I so desire that humans get into their fuller potential, at least, maybe also in the full sooner or later, but that they don't leave out certain parts of their lives only because, you know, they think they are not there. And you have demonstrated how, you know, you can work with your brain all the time, with your analysis work wherever. You don't have to be in a woo-woo sector of energy healing, and still don't shut out the other part. And we who are working more on the intuitive part, we can appreciate the more technical part, the more mental part. And for me, it's sort of closing the circle, this what we did today, and I'm very, very, very grateful for that. Thank you, Markus.
Yeah, just one thing that I wanted to add. What I'd really like to see was that it would really be interesting to see if some people or teachers who can really teach this kind of thing would actually teach our children these things, because if you really start to integrate these things more early on in your life and you really learn how to use it, I think we could reach a pretty interesting level there. And that's, yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Let's hope for the best for the future. Yeah.
So we have a comment here from Nancy Ann Steely, and she says, so true that when the body is relaxed, the mind and brain can relax. Yet tricky to access this sensing, feeling place of relaxation through the body, feeling the movement of ki, not stuck in the mind's interpretation. Thank you so much for sharing this, Markus.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
So if we have no more comments and takeaways, we are meeting.
Ooh, takeaway, Margherita.
Ah, I love it. I want to have you back, Markus, and then we're going to do some, I think, some small exercises next time. Maybe we can construct some of them if you like.
Yeah,
because this is a great topic to entertain. And next week we are back on Connections Forum at 10 a.m. Eastern, and it's 3 o'clock CET, right?
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock in Central Europe. 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, and we will have Rendauer next week.
Okay.
Ooh, okay. Let's see.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.